Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Reality Check, the Truth About Automation. My name is Marianne Kalahana. I am the Director of Marketing at RSI Content Solutions, and we're very happy you could take an hour out of your day to join us. A couple notes about today. This webinar is being recorded. Everyone will receive a link to that recording following the webinar. Also, I'd like to mention that the sponsors of the webinar, DCL and RSI, have been running a year-long survey on the state of technology adoption and digital revenue metrics from publishing and media organizations. I will send everyone a link to that survey and invite you to share your information. So before I present our panelists, a little bit about our sponsors. Next slide, please. DCL stands for Data Conversion Laboratory, and DCL is a leader in organizing, converting, and moving content to modern formats for wide access and new revenue streams. DCL has expertise across many industries. Their proprietary technology matched with US-based project management teams solve clients' complex conversion challenges securely, accurately, and on time. Their services include document conversion strategy, identifying document redundancy, extracting metadata, and transforming legacy and future documents for real needs today and into the future. DCL serves a very broad client base, as you can see from this slide, a sample of just some of DCL's customers. And DCL spans all industries. And now a little bit about RSI Content Solutions, my company. RSI started in 2000 as a consulting company helping publishers and media organizations with XML and content management related technologies. Today, RSI is a software company, and we are the people behind RSuite CMS, the only content management system designed specifically for publishers. Next slide. RSuite is used to store, manage, edit, transform, and deliver content. In 2006, the first version of RSuite CMS was released, and today RSuite serves a number of publishing verticals, including scientific, technical, and medical publishers, educational publishers, scholarly publishers, legal publishers, religious publishers, and many more. I am thrilled to have here with us two of the publishing industry's leading consultants from the DETI Group. The DETI Group provides hands-on leadership for publishers to implement new digital strategies. Mike Etzen is President and Principal Consultant at DETI. Mike served as Vice President and Director of Publishing Technology at Houghton Mifflin prior to forming DETI. He has extensive experience with high design and multiple media requirements. He focuses on understanding and interpreting your digital publishing needs, assessing current products and infrastructure, and helping to define an efficient and practical digital publishing workflow. Also with us is John Corkery. John is Vice President of Client Development at DETI. John has more than 20 years of experience in the interactive digital marketplace, advocating for clients and creating collaborative partnerships to advance digital businesses and products. He's held executive positions at several publishing and pre-media corporations, including Aptara, Quad Graphics, and iContent Consulting. Some of John's clients include Cambridge University Press, Cengage Learning, McGraw-Hill, Reader's Digest, Springer Verlag, and Time. So before I turn it over to Mike and John, we're going to start with a quick poll. I'm going to launch the poll, and I ask you to finish this sentence. I am interested in the quality surrounding my organizations, and the options are initial content creation, content production processes, digital product development, and by that we mean ebooks, apps, online products, legacy content conversion, cross-channel distribution. So you can go ahead and select one or more of those the following options. We're going to keep this up just for a couple minutes, and then we'll share the results with everybody. A couple people are still voting according to the GoToWebinar. I'm going to take a moment to also explain, if you have questions at any time during this webinar, we're going to save 15 minutes at the end to review any questions you have, but I do invite you to use the GoToWebinar dialog box and just type in your question and we will get to it. If we don't get to it during this webinar, we'll be sure to answer an individual one-on-one after. So we have just about 92% voted. And I'm going to give you one more second to vote, and I'm going to close the poll now. So I've closed the poll, and let's see if I can share the results with everyone. So 81% of you today are concerned around the content production process. That's in line, I know, with what we see around our content management, our suite customers. Next, we have 67% who are concerned with digital product development, followed by a close 63% with initial content creation, 48% legacy content conversion, and then 33% with cross-channel distribution. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mike and John, and welcome them again.
Hi, Mary Ann. We've seen the results. Yes. So first of all, we just wanted to thank Linda and Vincent from DCL, and of course you, Mary Ann, for hosting this event. We very much appreciate the opportunity to speak about quality today. This is John Corkery. I thought that I might just give a little brief overview of DETI Group and what we do here first. We're a content technology consulting firm. Our focus is on people, process, and technology as the basis for helping our clients achieve business value. We specialize in the growth and evolution of content-driven businesses. We merge deep publishing industry and IT experience, and we focus on solution flexibility and technical innovation to meet the demands of a very turbulent market these days. Some of the services that we offer are helping clients establish business value metrics around programs and strategies in the implementation of technology or in the change management of their organizations. We help them develop solutions architecture. Our content media verticals in creating intelligent future state plans. We develop programs and integrate technology with minimal disruption to the creative and current best practices in-house. We have what we call a light touch process. And all of this is based on firmly established business value metrics that we establish with our clients. That's sort of an overview of us.
Okay, thanks, John. And I also wanted to thank DCL and RSI for hosting. and giving us the opportunity to speak to everyone today. All right, so the agenda today, we have a number of things. We're going to talk briefly about quality, the elements of a quality project, and the elements of a quality content workflow, some common automation questions, and then we have a few cases that we can go through depending on how much time we have left.
And there'll be time for questions and answers.
Right. This is actually one of my favorite quotes here. Quality is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, and skillful execution. I guess that says it all. Basically, focus. So there's a lot of different ways to talk about quality. One of the ways that we like to talk about quality are through the 8 dimensions of quality, which comes from a Harvard Business Review article by David Garvin. And the 8 dimensions are laid out here, as you can see. You can look at all types of things through these 8 dimensions, and it's a good tool to help you sort of understand what you're trying to achieve, where you need to make improvements, and so forth. And this tool can be applied to your content itself, as well as the processes, systems, and the projects that are there to help your content improve and be delivered on time and with high quality.
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties about as we think about quality these days is that it cuts across many different areas within our organizations, and to many, especially publishers, these areas are new. These areas are new ground, and the difficulty of applying standards and practices that we've had in place maybe for years in our content creation processes don't necessarily always make the transition into process and technology systems that we would like.
And so I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but just to give you an example, if you look at conformance on the bottom, if you're looking at your editorial and design content, it might mean the whether you are achieving a consistent look and feel, a consistent editorial angle for your clients, so that's, for example, one example of how you might apply this to content. If you're talking about reliability, you could interpret that as being, for example, if having a standard expectations that are met by your customers. So if your customers, for example, see a link in a article, and they click on it, the web page will be there, for example. So that would be sort of a reliable experience for the client.
And these become multidimensional as you begin to get further and further into the digital realm, and your content has to become much more flexible and stretching within those realms.
Right. So we're not going to take the time to go through all of these and all of the possible. This could be a long discussion just on this one graph or this one graphic right here. We're happy to talk further about it at a future date. But we just wanted to throw that out there as a good, an interesting tool for sort of understanding where you are and what you're trying to achieve. We're digressing a little bit here away from content because this is something that we feel very strongly about and is related somewhat to our value, but also in the what DETI Group brings to the table, but also is related to the projects that you may undertake to improve your content quality and so forth. So 4 elements of a quality project are solving the right problem for your business, software and service, vendor service projects often fail because people are trying to solve the wrong problem for their business at that time. So in order to understand what problems to solve, you have to have a good understanding of your current state of affairs, and we highly recommend that is actually measured. So some metrics on what do you want to improve, and what is the current state of things as far as content quality in any of those dimensions. And here's how we can define it specifically. The second part of any successful high-quality project is starting with the end in mind, understanding very clearly what your future state looks like. And I don't necessarily mean as a fully detailed specification document, but understanding what your future state looks like as a business. So is the future state to improve the quality of your content production or your content development by by X% based on the metrics that you use? It might be the end state might be we're going to be able to produce apps X days after production of content in another format. So starting with the end in mind is very good, and having metrics for your end are also going to help you focus on your project. Thirdly, driving your solutions from your measured objectives. So not only failing fast if what you're doing is not actually matching your future goals, but making all the large project decisions based on your desired metrics, which actually can bring you to some interesting places and interesting innovations that sort of have to occur in order to match those metrics. And one of the key issues that sometimes come up is having working software does not necessarily mean success. Sometimes large software projects or large projects in general get distorted as far as the objectives go, and having metrics driving your project decision making will actually help you focus on the business value. Finally, measuring your results to show success at the end of the project, to prove the project's worth, and prove that you provided business value to your company.
It always makes sense to start at the top with all the stakeholders to establish what that business value is going to be, and it is oftentimes different things to different people.
All right, moving on. The dimensions of a quality content workflow. So you, as a publishing or a content producing organization, have a content workflow now. So what are the dimensions? What are you trying to change? Those are important questions for you to ask yourself. Your content workflow is composed of people, processing, technology. Each one of those dimensions is important in understanding your current state, understanding what you're trying to achieve, and understanding how you're going to get to a successful project.
At a very simple level, when you're thinking about people, we like to refer to like a RACI modeling exercise in order to determine whether the roles and responsibilities that you're currently using or are currently assigned are in balance with what you're trying to achieve. Oftentimes we find that there are organizations where people have too many people that have to be consulted, and thus things become a bottleneck, or there are too many worker bees and not enough people making decisions, or the other way around. Communications is very key in this. Setting up things as simple as standard calls and having regular reporting and a reporting structure and an escalation structure within the organization oftentimes will circumvent problems quality issues that might happen as a result of a lack of these things. And another question is how frequently are you updating the skills and training of your people? Is this something that's encouraged within the organization?
Okay, and process. Do you have a well-understood, well-defined process as your starting position? Do you understand how your workflow may change with a software or a new production process? Is something that's important for understanding and achieving success, and also achieving high-quality content in the ongoing workflow. Minimizing the opportunities for error is something that is important to look at, and understanding quality at the point of creation. So you have the potential for someone to actually produce content, and then so that one of the things that we see sometimes is that there is an equal or greater effort sometimes to achieve to do quality assurance on that content or quality control on that content by another editor or whatnot, whereas if the original person is empowered to produce something of high quality, they can, the whole organization can be more successful. And finally, technology. The technology is a part of any content workflow process these days, whether it's from the apps that people are using, the machines, or workflow systems, and so forth. And those are used in many ways to help improve quality, help drive things, make things move to different channels faster, and so forth. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well in our examples. So thinking of the three different dimensions is important as you undertake achieving a higher level of quality in any area of your content workflow. Two common automation questions that I think are important to discuss at a little bit more length is what activities in the content workflow can be performed automatically. So there is, and what is essentially, what are the people in the process going to do, and what is the software going to do in order to achieve quality, and what is the best use of those, of the people and the technology, the best mix in order to achieve that. And generally, in an ideal world, in any case, our philosophy, which is maybe ideal.
Yeah, there's kind of a perception that among a lot of people these days that, we are someday going to get to the point where all we have to do is push a button and things will happen magically, right? And we don't ascribe to that. Our philosophy around things is the best practice for the best outcome. And people still play a very important role as far as content is concerned. And I think that maybe from we've got the two sides of the house. The people who wear the shirts that say I hate people, who hang out in dark offices and places like that. And then there are the people on the other side that say we hate technology. And sometimes it's a little difficult to bring the two of them together, but I would say common goals for the best outcome is probably the best way to apply the logic to the automation or semi-automation question.
Right. So in the ideal world, the people would be doing all of the creative things, right? So developing content, figuring out interesting ways to compose things, and so forth, and the software would do everything else. And in an ideal world, people are doing what is essentially their best at, which is being creative. Exactly. And the software would essentially run all the other pieces underneath to support that process, which is essentially what we're trying to achieve with technology. Technology is used for efficiency, not necessarily efficiency in in adding more creativity, but enabling people to spend more of their time every day being creative and contributing some high-value creativity to the content that's being produced.
And automation and technology can become a problem when it creates complexities around, the daily functions that people need to perform. And we've actually seen some pretty ridiculous things around this. People whose lives are actually made far more difficult simply because the business has a goal of achieving an XML first workflow, when an XML slightly after the fact might be perfectly acceptable. Also, it's interesting to note that when you have things like this added to the mix, when it's not just at all about the content, and processes and systems enter into the mix, editorial quality can start to suffer as a result, because we've really been hybridizing our teams these days, and editorial people are becoming more and more responsible and more concerned about how they maintain and develop these digital products. So it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily give them more time to do their work. It's just that we have a whole lot more work for them to do. And some of these folks are not really well suited to be making these decisions or to have these things hanging over their head. And a lot of times, you'll have people having to QA their own stuff. We've heard that a lot. So anyway, these are just some tidbits from that.
So being philosophical about it, right? So the next question, does automation cause more problems than it solves? That kind of is a good lead-in from what you were saying, John. It can, yes, indeed, but it actually is not the purpose of automation to cause more problems than it solves. And developing an intelligent project will in fact do that. And one of the ways to develop an effective project is to really focus on the business value you're trying to achieve. So automation can reduce design quality if you've decided to tell your designers that, well, we're going to do a completely templatized approach, and it may be that companies go too far in reducing design capability and essentially reducing the competitiveness of the design. On the other hand, it may be that too much time is being put into design for the task, more than is appropriate. So it's a good practice to understand the kind of quality that you're trying to produce when you do design, and to get a sense of, through metrics, of how roughly how long do you think it should take to produce a particular type of content.
And every publisher has their own workflow that they have to adhere to. Many publishing organizations have to allow editorial to have correction cycles right up until the point where the content becomes final. Others are working in a more templated environment, and they force these controls early on in the copy editing cycles. But the whole idea around smart technology application, or smart application of the metrics around people, process, and technology, is to establish exactly what you think the process flow needs to be, and doing a very light touch on the areas where you don't need to be so heavy-handed. And a lot of the new technologies coming out these days will allow you to implement content management systems and things of this nature. It will almost be seamless to your creative people. So these are some things to keep in mind.
Right. Technology that interferes with the creative process is something that may cause more problems. But understanding your creative process and what you're trying to achieve. I mean, it's interesting, there's a little bit of an imbalance these days in content that is produced for print versus content that's produced for digital or other digital derivatives, in that there's a whole lot more design work that's being put into print, whereas the digital area is in fact growing in importance. So, so asking yourself what is the what is the goal here? What kind of level should we be working on? Of course, print has a few more requirements, but still, it's important to understand what you're trying to achieve. And on editorial quality as well, there tends to be more quality control on print products than on, say, EPUB, as many of you may have noticed in reading digital books. And so the question is, what is the level you're trying to achieve? With content, of course, the ideal case is you have 100%. Everything is perfect. And I always hate it when I am reading a digital book and I'm not getting the quality that I'm expecting. So, but there's big issues there, and it's what is the level of effort an organization can undertake to provide a high level of quality in both design and editorial, in essentially the creative processes.
And these questions can be answered. There are solutions to these out there. We've seen a lot of clients who've suffered quite unnecessarily in these areas because they're just simply not aware of what's available to them. So these are good questions to ask.
Right. Okay, so now we're going to try to move to a couple of cases. We've sort of abstracted them a bit, but we're trying to illustrate some approaches to different types of problems that that publishers and content producers may face. So the first one is a transformation case, and that essentially is the taking of content that was intended for one use and producing it for another use, essentially creating a derivative product. If people online are fairly technical, I guess in fact everyone's probably heard of the term XML. So using XML or any other means necessary, essentially. So we have this is a particular, I guess this is the case that's on a project where the need, that the actual business value that our client was trying to achieve is that it was twofold. One is reducing the time to market for derivative content. So in the old process, as we found, it took many days, in fact weeks, to produce all of the derivatives that this publisher wanted to have, and a whole lot of time as well. So reducing time to market.
This is highly designed content.
Right. So reducing that, reducing the time spent on derivative products would have a twofold effect. One is it would actually make things go to market faster. But it would also, as a secondary benefit, it would actually reduce the need for the creative people to switch back and forth continually between one issue and the next. So if you were able to close an issue, you would be able to actually produce all the digital products faster. You can fully concentrate on the next issue at hand.
This is a high volume business to consumer publication, so one of the things that we found was that the creative team and the production team were tasked with creating all of these products on very tight deadlines, and what they would end up doing is they would, the first rush was to print, and then to digital derivatives. They were feeding websites and licensees from within the same framework. And you know, the real challenge in this situation, of course, is you know, the highest business value that could be achieved would be to establish a single stream workflow where we create once and then we output to multiple formats. Oftentimes not as easy to achieve, right?
Right, and in that process, the second point of business value is maximizing the value of the digital derivatives content. One of those is preserving the inherent richness of content when it is initially created. So carrying forward some aesthetics, some design elements, some metadata, and so forth from the initial point of content creation to all of the digital derivatives. And there is a automation path for some of this where some of the tasks were automated. And the automation, in fact, the good thing about automation is that it provides consistency. If the consistency is poor quality, then of course it's bad, but if it's high quality, if it's well thought through with sensitivity to the creative process, it can be a very good thing.
And it's got to be flexible.
So that's the first case. I think I'm just going to spend 5 minutes on each and we can answer questions.
Okay.
Content conversion case. In this case, a large number of pages were being produced and that were extremely out of date, and they needed to be updated, and there needed to be an ability to customize that the content as well, whereas the content was in very old formats and so forth. So, and secondarily, to enable the content to be delivered to new and additional channels, digital outputs, whereas before it was only print. So beginning with the end in mind, and as with any project, that's an important factor, we did some upfront definition of what a successful, we worked with the other company, which in fact in this case was DCL, to define what a successful conversion was and to pre-test the creation of digital derivatives. And that is, in fact, running out the entire process to work out the kinks before a large amount of work was put into actual conversion.
And they're very good at that, too.
So achieving quality, the idea was to provide a high level of automation and making that automation a high value proposition. And we also worked to set up a verification process for content that was being pulled in. And in fact, we trained internal staff to do editorial ballot verification and provided sort of an augmentation for sort of technical validation of the content. The idea also was to minimize the cost of systems by using existing technologies. So with a lot of work up front, the process was able to run very, very, was able to produce a lot of, thousands of pages of content in a short, with a high level of result.
Just a little tidbit about conversion qualities, right? You hear percentages bandied about. So 99.5% quality is essentially one error in every 2,000 characters. In a, say for instance, a higher education publication, this would be approximately 4 errors per page. If you go to a quality level of 99.995%, you're talking 1 error in every 20,000 characters, and this is 1 error in every 2 to 3 pages. And anybody who's ever done a content conversion project knows how crucial these numbers can become when you're up against this.
All right, so I guess that's the content conversion.
That's content conversion.
Okay, here's another that is a CMS implementation case, where the business value in this case is to have standardized and more accurate delivery of content from a variety of sources. and faster quality control processing. So anytime that content is produced by a variety of vendors, you're going to have you're often, I shouldn't say going to, but you're very likely to have differences in quality, and there's some impetus on you to produce to assure that the content coming in from all these sources is of a high enough level of quality. And that can be very time consuming, and in fact often, depending on what type of company, that's sort of not understood and not actually in the budgets perhaps. So there's some careful work that needs to be done there. So for example, if an EPUB goes out, it comes back, content goes out, it comes back as an EPUB, for example, and you some additional work by editorial may not sort of be showing up in how you do things today, in sort of the description of how you do things today, which is why it's very important to understand where you are and where you're trying to go. So in any case, this is a task that can be improved through automation. Again, beginning with the end in mind, having a definition of what successful content delivery and metadata actually is extremely important, and what is the prioritized value of the different aspects of that. So extraordinarily high quality in one area just for the sake of it may or may not be important if there are 5 critical metadata fields that have to be extremely accurate.
And these can be controlled algorithmically in a content management system for those who are submitting content to the content management system, which is kind of nice for, it has to pass validation, right?
Right. So let's see. So there are some technologies out there that are useful depending on what you're doing. If you're using XML, you can validate against a GTD or schema, but you can also use technology called schematron to do more extensive automatic validation of content. I mean, if it can be understood as a formula, it's very likely that it can be quality control can be vastly reduced. The manual quality control can be vastly reduced. Minimizing production costs can also mean automatic routing of content to either a delivery or a repair workflow, which is something that was achieved in this particular project. And actually I should say though, with all of these cases, it's interesting, we don't necessarily try to achieve 100% automation. Oh, and I should say this is an R-Suite implementation here as well. But we do try, essentially you may have heard of the 80-20 rule, where you can achieve 80% of what you're looking for 20% of the cost, and the last 20% costs 80% of the budget to achieve 100% perfection. So we feel very strongly that the answer is not necessarily 100% automation in any of these cases, but that it may be more beneficial when looking at the whole to have automation take care of 80% of what you're trying to achieve, and having the last 20% still be a manual process. Yeah. And there may in fact be benefits to that, where you may that 20% may actually inherently have some elements that are essentially creative control. So having somebody define the structure of content could be potentially done automatically in some cases, but some cases there may be benefits to thinking of things one way or another. For example, what is a sidebar? What is what elements need to be included in digital content? So anyway, so that's a lot of. I guess that's our last case. We so anyway, and we're at 1:44. So Marilyn, should we switch to questions at this point?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike and John. Please feel free to submit questions at any time in the dialog box. We're ready to stump the consultant. We were talking about that yesterday, and invite you to take part in that game. I thought those were really interesting conversion metrics, John. I'd not heard those before. And
I made them up.
before we get to the first, before we get to the first question, I was just thinking when I was listening to both of you, I'm a pretty big reader, and I've been noticing as I've read more on digital these days, I notice so many more errors in my digital books than in the printed books. So I think that's, that really speaks to the content of this webinar. And with that, one of the first questions we have is, do you have examples of how publishers are addressing quality content production when challenged with speeding up time to market?
Well, that's a very good question. This is something that we confront just about every day because, of course, it's one of the most important things hitting the marketplace right now. How publishing organizations have not been awarded larger budgets. They don't have more people working for them these days, and yet they're being asked to produce more and more products. iPad Mini came out yesterday, right? And many of these digital products have different aspect ratios to them. So if your content is highly designed, this creates some very interesting, shall we say, trade-offs for you. And even if we just sort of even go a little simpler than that, just creating EPUBs, the ability to use CSS in your EPUBs to be able to enrich your content, right? And to potentially semi-automate these processes.
Right. So yeah, so in I should say in an example of where we've seen faster time to market is a process that we looked at one client where they, the existing practice was to work with an outsourced company to produce the EPUBs, 100%. And what they found was the effort level, or what we all found was the effort level to actually provide minor corrections to the vendor. Actually, it was a U.S. vendor that was producing it offshore. Was extraordinarily painful. So it might take a week.
And this was not DCL, by the way.
Yeah. So this is sort of an ongoing process. So basically, the initial conversion would happen. They would get the EPUB back. They would review. They would find some issues they wanted to change. They'd have to send it back. It would take a few weeks and maybe some interpretation to fix it. And that might happen a couple of times, and it was not satisfactory. And it was a long, time-consuming process. And this is not necessarily just an EPUB issue. But
we call these soft costs. A lot of times when clients are considering projects, they will frequently only consider the hard costs, and they don't take into consideration, all the plumbing that has to happen between people, process, and quality. A lot of times these things are not measured by organizations, and the finance people find out that you're bleeding red ink and they don't understand why. Right. And it's very difficult to put a handle on it.
Right. So in any case, the preliminary solution was to have the initial conversion offshore and then to teach the editorial staff how to use tools that could edit
in XML.
In EPUB. And today, one of the surprising things that, surprised us a year and a half ago anyway, and what we found ever since, was that editorial staff are often, given all the change that's been happening out there, are often very willing to learn even complex tools to achieve what they want to do. So in any case, the staff would just do one conversion, and they'd make the other corrections on their own. But one of the interesting secondary things that came out of it was that they were actually they ended up producing very quickly, producing higher and higher quality content and enhanced EPUBs far, far more often just because we had the tools available.
And far more quickly.
And far more quickly. So it actually was a great example of using a little technology and adjusting the process and how things worked to achieve a high level of quality.
And it really was a little technology. You know, we have a joke around here that kind of goes, you know, it was a solution in search of a problem, right? A lot of big box technology does frequently become a solution in search of a problem, and when it comes home to roost, and we've seen this many times with clients, you know, you're told to bend your process around this piece of technology that your CEO just bought, right? And you know, it's not any time an elegant solution. You know, when there are CMS systems like our suite that are built for publishing specifically,
yeah.
But then there are larger systems that are more enterprise type systems that aren't.
So I have an interesting comment here. So doing it right the first time and producing a high quality EPUB the first time is in fact just as good a solution.
That's right.
So that is an excellent comment. So doing your homework up front so that you're not getting erroneous content and providing a high quality understanding of what you need and what you're trying to achieve with your EPUB is yet another way.
Right. Your conversion vendor is only as good as the content they're provided and the direction that they're given in the very beginning.
Right. So
good point.
That's one example. We can keep going, or are there other interesting questions?
Well, let's go. We do have some other questions that I'd like to address. Do you have some guidelines to achieve a very rich level of semantic value in the master markup? Because it is the interpretation of these semantics that enable rich outputs.
Yes. So, all right. Do we have what did you say, a framework for that?
Yeah, a framework or guidelines on how to achieve a very rich level of semantic value.
Yeah. So we love rich semantic value. And it sometimes takes a little bit more to produce, but it may be well worth it down the road if your content is something that has long-term value. And also requiring more upfront work to make sure that you understand that your vendor understands what they're trying to achieve. We like to, where the semantic value is created, we like the content creators to provide extra semantic value that can be, with automation, be produced in the standard content. So, however, of course, there's too much. Sometimes there can be too much work, and again, with it, you do have to weigh the value of the semantic material you're producing against what the business needs are now and the potential future or the future state that you're thinking of. But you can do a lot of things to improve the semantic tagging of your content even within a print workflow.
One of the things that used to happen is, you know, of course, you know, 10, 12 years ago, there were these, you know, there were your standard XML standards, there were DCDs that were established for, you know, everything but the kitchen sink, right? And people found that, though, you know, in the beginning, that what they wanted to do is they wanted to try and tag to these standards that were going to allow them to do every possible thing that they might encounter. More recently, we found that it's better to have something that's trimmed down a little bit and tailored more specifically to your needs rather than, you know, going to the nth degree. It's probably better to be a little more flexible and stretch for the exceptions and, you know, develop your tagging to the rule, so to speak.
Right. And so as far as a guideline goes, or guide to this, I I think I would say there's no. I would not want to put out a hard and fast guideline. Depending on the effort level, who's doing it, is it a vendor, is it a conversion vendor, is it your own editorial staff that is required to do this, there is a different answer. Right. So what we like to do is find where you're trying to achieve the business value and tailor the process and sort of the vendor selection and so forth to that.
But would you say the 80-20 rule applies here? I mean,
it probably does.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I think that sometimes people, especially when they're talking about XML, sometimes they've tried to create the perfect standard, and you know, the 80-20 rule applies.
Mm-hmm.
You both mentioned error rates in digital content. Can you speak about the types of errors that cause problems during content conversion?
That's kind of tricky. It depends on how you're having your content converted, right? If you're going for a manual process like a rekeying, you probably want to have a double type and verify pass on something like that to achieve a very high level of accuracy, like the 99.995% accuracy level that we were talking about. This is particularly common in scholarly content. But, you know, a lot of clients will do an OCR pass and then try and clean up after an OCR pass. It really just depends on what type of conversion you're going to be doing and how you know, what level of quality you're looking for.
So as far as non-content related conversion, and actually I can't remember what type of conversion you're talking about, but you know, that there can be, you know, obviously structural issues, misapplied semantic tagging can cause problems or maybe not, but you know, it's not good to have them there. Right. So there's a lot of dimensions to that as well, and I would say that it's something that you want to tailor. That you know, you want to understand your objectives, and then you can do an analysis of what it is that's going to actually, you know, be important.
Yeah, I guess the short answer is there's a lot of factors involved. It's very complicated. Right? That's why you need consultants.
Nice. Well, we're almost near the end, but I'd like if we could address one more question. I will say we have a couple questions that we haven't been able to get to, but we will answer these offline. Someone from one of our companies will be contacting the people who've asked them the questions. So the final question is, how long is a typical workflow implementation process? And what are some good ways for editorial and design staff to dabble in the new technology to prepare for the changes that are forthcoming?
That's a great question. Yeah. This one really depends on the organization.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say depends all the time, but the you know, it's interesting. Different organizations have different starting points. So they can be different sizes, obviously. Different work groups are of different sizes. But there are organizations that haven't seen a lot of, that may not have seen a lot of change, may not have been dabbling in technology, and there may be some that have, you know, a different type of staff that's, you know, more, you know, has more of a great, you know, an approach of trying new technologies and so forth. So, you know, it's hard to say.
Usually what we do is we begin up the front of the house, and we will sit down and we will discuss with people exactly what the formation of the organization looks like. What are the objectives for, you know, the current state objectives? Sometimes they just want to achieve some very simple things. They want to put out better ebooks, right? Or what is the future state look like? You know, do you want to implement a content management system? Do you want to have a distribution channel? Do you want to be able to submit, you know, have clients log in and submit content? Do you have, social media interests. There are a lot.
So yes, there are a lot of factors. It's something that I would suggest if you're trying to find that out, having some kind of audit of how, a few days audit of to determine sort of where you are and to offer some suggestions is probably a pretty good idea.
And that's a good starting point.
Right.
That's a great starting point, Mike. And I will say that something we've been embracing, particularly this year in terms of CMS implementation, is following an agile methodology, because publishers and their staff want to very quickly get this product into their the people who are going to be working with it day to day, into their hands.
Yeah.
So we try to define an implementation that can be completed in 8 weeks. Now, it might not be the whole content management, everything you want to do in content management, but it's enough to get started, and then it's an iterative approach to implementing a CMS.
Right.
Because no matter where you want to be, there's going to be changes along the way.
Yeah, definitely having the other good thing about an agile approach with a CMS like RSI and so forth is, or RSI is, you start to get results early, so you can see what you're getting, make adjustments, and get exactly what you need, what your organization needs.
Right.
Particularly because publishing organizations today do not have the bandwidth to do extraordinarily detailed sort of waterfall method specifications. So
right.
I would agree with that.
It's a good point.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone today for joining us. We've reached our time limit, and I know all of us have to get back to our day jobs. So a reminder, this webinar has been recorded. Everyone will receive a link to that recording and a follow-up email from DCL. Please take a moment and fill out our publisher survey. I chatted everyone a link to that. There'll also be a link in the thank you email. Contact DETI Group to get started with a content analysis, a requirements analysis, and please keep track of upcoming webinars on our website, rsicms.com and dcllab.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.